Hey, it's Rachel, and I want to tell you what to do when you have a child who truly just doesn't listen to your advice. So maybe you tell your child to tie their shoe, they ignore you, and then they trip and fall. Or maybe you tell them not to be friends with someone in their class or in their neighborhood because you know that child isn't a good influence, but your child doesn't listen, and then something happens and your child gets in trouble. You were right all along, but your child just never listened to your advice. So how do you get them to listen, especially because the truth is, you do have good life experience and you do have a lot of knowledge that it would be helpful for them to have. But when you're thinking about how to talk to a child who isn't listening to your advice, think about this from your perspective too. Think back when someone told you what to do. Maybe they were telling you not to date someone, or maybe they were telling you not to take a certain job, but you already had it in your head that you wanted to date this person or you wanted to take the job. What you usually do when someone gives you their advice, especially if it's unsolicited, is you just write them off. You just don't listen to them. Or if you even consider their perspective and you think about what they've said, usually you reconfirm your own opinion, you dismiss all the evidence that they're right, and you find all the evidence that you're right. Because once you have it in your mind that you want to do something, if someone just comes at you with advice, you're not all that likely to listen to it. So what do we do to get kids a little bit disengaged from their own perspective so that they can see another perspective? I'm going to give you 3 tips to do that. And the first is, before you tell a child what your advice is, listen to them first. Listen to their perspective. Understand why they want to be friends with this child in their class or their neighborhood who isn't a good influence. This isn't necessarily to agree with them. The whole purpose of this is to help them feel heard. Because the way human beings work is we are willing to listen to someone else once we feel heard first. So if we listen to their perspective, they're much more likely to be able to listen to our perspective. And the second thing you want to do is once you're sharing your perspective, you actually don't want to just shove it down their throat. You want to ask them some questions and help them really think about the situation. Now, truth be told, they're not necessarily going to come up with the same advice that you had to give, but they are more likely to think through the situation rationally so that they can possibly see some alternatives that they wouldn't otherwise have seen. So they may not meet you exactly in the place where you are, but they're much more likely to think through the situation so they're not making impulsive or unhealthy choices. Now, the third thing I will say is if there's something you really do want to tell them and you want to tell them directly, if you want them to listen, simply ask them if you can give them advice. Just say something like, would you mind if I share a perspective? The truth is, if you've listened to them first, chances are they're going to be willing to listen to your perspective at that point. But if ultimately they say, no, I don't want your advice, you need to be okay with that because the truth is they weren't going to listen to your advice anyway. So I hope that gives you some ideas for what to do if you have a child who's really stuck in their own perspective. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out at rachel@rachel-bailey.com. I'll see you next time.